We haven't had a new school constructed in the city since 1989.
It's basically a haphazard proposal.
So it's been about 30 years since the state's invested this kind of money in the city.
If it passes, we lose. If it doesn't pass, we lose. If it passes, how do we lose? Well, the commercial rate would go up $2.50. We already have either the highest or second highest commercial rate in the Commonwealth.
And so, as many people know, years ago, around 15 years ago, the city went to a kindergarten through 8th grade model and then a high school model. We used to have, 3 middle schools, Magnet, Lynch, Peck. And the decision at the time, a few superintendents ago, when I was actually a student in the schools, was to go back to K through 8. It's not often we get unanimous public feedback from teachers, parents, students, community members that there's a strong interest in going back to the middle school model. And so what's happened under the K through 8 system is that depending on what neighborhood you live in, you either have adequate, better, or worse facilities for a middle school experience, middle school education, because the K through 8 schools were built for elementary students. And so we don't have middle school state-of-the-art facilities, laboratories. There's not a great ecosystem for learning, just based on what we see in other schools throughout the Commonwealth and throughout our country.
The issue for schools, I think Hoyokers need to know first, is why build schools. The last school we built was the Dean School itself, which went online in the 1980s, early 1980s. We did so replacing a vocational school known as Holyoke Trade School, which is currently where the new CVS is located on Beach and Sargent Streets. We have not replaced any of our schools. We've done some renovations. We put some good money into the high school, so some of our elementary schools are in good shape. Some of our elementary schools are not in good shape. If we don't replace schools, eventually a future generation is going to be faced with the problem at a higher cost of building a new school, with the school having to be taken offline and possibly actually being condemned. So we understand with infrastructure issues, we have to face them in a timely manner, but we have to plan to pay for them over a long distance manner, and that's why we have the option to borrow. We also have a good option of reimbursement from the state for a good portion of our construction cost.
For us now, we have a once-in-a-generation, once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to build 2 brand new middle schools that every student that goes through grades 6 through 8 will have an opportunity to go to. One would be at the current Peck site, demolish the Peck site, build a new school there. The other would be in the downtown area of the city next to Lawrence School. And so to give, just in the estimates that we're dealing with now, 2 brand new middle schools cost around $120 million. And so we were able to convince MSBA in an unprecedented way to support the construction of 2 middle schools simultaneously at the same time. It almost never happens. And we were able to convince the state to give us that support. And the numbers we're looking at now, the city will be responsible for about 1/3, about $40 million of the $120 million. So there alone, the state is granting the city up to $80 million to build 2 brand new middle schools. And we can't say that promise will be there years from now. And so we need to take advantage of that opportunity today. And I would say for 2 brand new middle schools, $40 million city share, something that will last at least the next 100 years, is an investment that we should make today in the future of our community and our schools.
It's democracy. I understand that. I understand the mayor's perspective on this, and while I don't agree with it, I understand where he's coming from. The thing that we haven't mentioned is we have a receiver in the city of Holyoke. The taxpayers of Holyoke are paying for his $180,000 plus salary, plus his benefits, plus I think he gets a car, plus he lives not in Holyoke, he lives in Essex County, north of Boston. So he takes his salary, he takes all that, leaves town. But meanwhile, the Holyoke taxpayers foot the bill. If we pass this, we have a school board that is emasculated by state law. In other words, it has no power. The receiver has all the power.
And right now there's tight space at our K through 8 schools. And so by moving middle schools out of the K through 8 schools now, that opens up more space to have more seats for kindergarten for kids that need it in our community. And then it also consolidates some of the programs we have. It'll also save some operating expenses, some transportation money for the district and for the city. But again, the most important thing to consider here is what type of education do we want to provide for our kids, our families here in the city. And apart from the educational impact, which is the most important, I think it'll help revitalize two neighborhoods of our community, increase property values, help us retain more of those families that are sending their kids out of district to charter schools, parochial schools, school choice. If we can rebuild our schools, if we can make sure that we're the number one school of choice for all of our families, and I'm convinced that more families would send their kids to the public schools, and more families, frankly, would move to Holyoke and start investing in our community.
We are a gateway community. We also are a community with the lowest income ratio per capita within the Commonwealth itself. We're negotiating that makes us up to 80% reimbursement, but the MSBA, which has the final say in Boston, is putting us at a 59% reimbursement. We think we can overcome some of that and raise the percentage amount with incentives that they offer other communities.
If we pass that, the commercial goes up $2.50, residential goes up $1.25, and those are estimates right now based upon $55 million. And as I think we're pretty well aware, usually construction estimates are a little soft, and so by that they'll probably go north, and then it'll be back to the taxpayers again, and the taxpayers will be footing that bill for a long time. If we don't pass it, I think we lose, because who are we hurting? We're hurting the future of Holyoke. We're hurting our school children, our teachers. We've only had one thing before us, and that is to build 2 new buildings. We don't have a plan for building one building in 5 years and a second building in 10 years, or however they scheme it. They don't have a plan. So I think based upon the way it's been presented for again, a lack of a plan, it's just a proposal.
All I'm asking the city council to do is let the voters, let the people of Holyoke decide if they want to invest some of their tax dollars in a brand new middle school. I own property here. I'm a taxpayer just like most of the residents here, and I'm willing to pay more a month. I'm willing to pay more a year if that means that hundreds of thousands of kids over so many years will be able to get a great educational experience in middle school. On an average $200,000 house, your taxes would go up about $250, and so less than $25 a month, less than $1 a day. And so ask yourself, is less than $1 a day something you're willing to give to make sure that any kid in our community gets a world-class education right here in the city?